Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for being here. Today I'm bringing you a Kickstarter preview of Harrow County, the board game, another game coming from Off the Page Games, the creators of Mind MGMT. And this is also taking a indie cult classic comic book into the tabletop world. Honestly, Off the Page right now has to be one of the premier creators when it comes to actually transferring something from the books and from the lore and stories that we love into a playable, experienceable world. Harrow County is no exception to that rule. This is a 3-player game, although the primary approach to this game is going to be a 2-player head-to-head, and we'll get into what I mean by that as we continue this video. But please keep in mind, I will be hopefully releasing a 3-player gameplay around mid-campaign once Shira, West, and myself happen to have a chance to all sit down in the studio again soon. Now, this is going to be taking the off-the-page games approach to board gaming. It is one of their trademark elements, something that they've become known for in this space. Modulars, little stories, little chapters or pieces that evolve as you play through the course of a fairly straightforward system. Now, what do I mean by that? In Mind MGMT, you had the balance system, right? As you started accomplishing or as you started winning games, you got little extra bits. They combined flavor and story with mechanics and, of course, rebalancing systems. Things that changed the puzzle of the game just enough to give whoever you were playing against or whatever team you were playing against that advantage for the next game. Harrow County is taking that approach, but also twisting it on its head. Here we're going to have chapters, and right now the preview, the prototype that I have in front of me, had a total of 5 chapters for me to play through. If there are more, if there's different modules, if there's other stuff outside of this, I have no idea either. I'm going to be very excited to watch the Kickstarter campaign and just watch as the fans and the community start digging in and talking about this world and what they want to see here. In the 5 modules that I have, or the 5 stories that I have in this game, we're going to expand all the way from a basic 2-player head-to-head through a few more levels of complexity, all the way up to a different version of the 2-player game with its own asymmetric character that gets integrated in, and then finally the 3-player version of Harrow County, where you actually introduce a faction that is not as invested in any one side's victory, but instead is twisting and manipulating almost every mechanic in the game system. So, what is Harrow County? Well, the best way for me to start this is to establish a bit of lore, a bit of context for the world that we're living in and the comic book where this comes from. Harrow County is a small rural community, maybe not all that far away from where you live. It's the kind of place you might miss if you were passing through, if you blinked. Or maybe turned a wary eye away from your surroundings. At night, strange figures move through lonely, forgotten places. When thunder rumbles and lightning flashes as bright as a witch's fire, you might glimpse inhuman shapes lumbering through the blasted heaths. Harrow County is a haunted place, a place where haints grow restless and uneasy. If you're planning on spending some time in Harrow, it's best to know a few charms or curses, depending on your disposition, and a few friends by your side. It's Harrow County. The world that we're in here is a world that has the occult, has mysteries, has backwoods, small town curses, and haints that are being brought up from the earth to try to, accomplish whatever goals they have. A witch was burned here back in the day, someone who had cursed the land and wreaked havoc on the people, and now 2 factions have arisen. Her family, the family of the witch, the family that wants retribution and punishment to the town and the people of Harrow County for what they did to their sister. And then we have the protectors. We have the young girl, Emmy, who is found in that very tree where the witch hung, and she has some type of connection to the land, adores and cares for the people and the world around Harrow County. And so her and the protectors have bonded together, a pact of people that insist on not only fighting against the family, but also fighting against the occult, while utilizing their own special magic powers. This is an asymmetric game. It's a two-player head-to-head, and throughout the course of it, you're going to be using your own character's special abilities to try to accomplish one of two tasks. The family is doing their best to rage the storm across the landscape here by using these storm tokens, and finally bring it up to these locations and destroy the various houses around the town. This is a sparsely populated town, and so ripping a few buildings down will have an immense impact. One of those is the local general store, and Tom, who works the front desk, does not need more trouble. A bear broke into the lumberyard the other week and scared the dickens out of Susie. I don't know where that tangent came from, but I feel like it adds to the context of the story. The protectors here are trying to actually rescue people by building a pathway not only of their own haints, but also road tokens so that they can reach and bring people back home. This is a dangerous world to travel through and not a place you want to be left without, like the text said, a few close friends. The winner of each session, or the winner of each chapter, will do so by accomplishing 7 victory points. Destroying a building or rescuing a civilian will be worth 2. Winning a battle and destroying another player's haint or taking down one of their protectors or one of their legendary characters, that is going to score you 1. And controlling the bramble, like our little haint here does, that center tile has a King of a Hill element. That is also going to be 1 victory point at the end of every full round. A round's going to consist of 3 turns per player, where you'll be shattering mason jars to take various actions across the state, build up your own personal tableau, leveling up your powers, expanding what you can do every single turn with every single specific action, and pressing forward towards victory condition. In my experience, the average game takes anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes, and there is a lot of reason to continue diving in and continue replaying, not only chapter to chapter, but also exploring other chapters as you open up the game. We'll talk about all those in just a second. As you start taking actions throughout the course of the game, you're going to be shattering mason jars up here. Now, each player has the same 4 mason jars to shatter. You're able to strengthen yourself, adding more cubes to the cube tower, giving you the chance to potentially win some battles in the future. You're able to go ahead and use your special character's ability. We have various different asymmetric characters, and depending on who you're playing with, you'll get special powers according to them. Do you take rusty nails and pin other players and other players' haints to the ground? Are you able to build pathways and barbed wire? So on and so forth. We also have our tile location here. This is where you can go ahead and take an attack, plus a free move, recruit, or strengthen action. It's where you actually engage in combat. And then finally, we have this token down here. This token is going to be interacting with your board. This is where some of the asymmetry is really going to start to shine. The protectors are just going to have a pretty basic board here. As you collect tiles from moving around the region, you're able to pick those tiles up from any location where you have your characters, and it grows your tableau. Whichever one of these 3 things you choose to do, you're able to do it more and more depending on how many tiles you have. So for instance, right now on my board, I would be able to recruit 3 times, I could move 4 times, or I could go ahead and strengthen myself 4 times. It's not a bad option. The family over here, however, is going to have a completely different system. They're going to have a little bit of a bag building system. They're able to lock tiles into their board, which will indicate how many things they draw from their bag. But every tile they have locked in is a special, unique type, which means they're going to be less likely to draw whatever they have stuck on their board, versus they're going to be more likely to draw whatever is pilferating throughout their bag. They'll reach in, and right now, they're set up so they'd be drawing 4 tiles. As they draw these tiles, they can place them out in front of them, and then take whatever actions they want in any order from the tiles here on the board. So for instance, I'd get 2 movement and 2 strengthen. Now, at the end of that, I can choose to leave tiles here on my board so I draw more up in a future round, or I can stick these tiles back in my bag and have the opportunity to go ahead and draw them back up again. Now, like I said, every player also has a unique asymmetric ability, and that ability will be upgraded as you start collecting scrolls or pieces of paper from around the landscape. So for instance, Emmy here has the ability Shelter. Place 1 cube from your supply onto every hex that has no cubes, but at least one of your haints. If this hex is targeted in an attack, add to your ready pool. If Emmy enters this hex, Place these cubes immediately in your ready pool. What does that mean? Well, Emmy is going to be able to create better protection and have better defense for any of the haints around the board. She'll also be able to use her own ability to collect those little cubes and place them over here in our cube tower. Now, every cube tower can only have a maximum of 6 from turn to turn from each player. But with Emmy's ability, you could actually bump that up to 7 or 8 if the other player is trying to attack you pretty often. Or, let's talk about Corbin over here. Convert and hate. Take one of your haints off the board and spawn 2 more haints. He just gets the opportunity to start pilferating them across the landscape, which can be pretty powerful because there is a degree of area control that gets mixed into this game. In a lot of ways, I see Harrow County as sort of a functional 2-player version of Root. Asymmetric player powers, unique actions, a little bit of territory control with absolutely some combat that does or does not have to happen, and alternative win conditions. All right, now let's talk about how the chapters actually start integrating into this. And like I said, I have 5 chapters so far in this game. The first chapter that we add is going to add in cards. Now, each faction is going to have their own unique set of cards, and in our case here with the Protectors, we have tactics cards. These are cards that you're going to have into your hand. They have super powerful abilities. For instance, spawn a haint on a hex with a townsfolk, or +2 range, or give your legend 3 movement, but they cannot bring any haints with them. These are just game-breaking extra actions and horribly brutal and gruesome at the same time, which is always lovely because that's the theme and that's the style of the comic book. You can play one of these every turn, which is pretty nice, pretty good ability. However, the family here is going to have an equally nice ability. They're going to have upgrades. Upgrades are going to give them more advanced tiles. These tiles go into their bag. You can see them all spread out up here. These tiles go into their bag, and then when you draw them, you get to use those tiles fully, like 2 strength tiles, or spawn 1. All of your spawning this turn can be within range from your legend, or spawn 2. Just extra more powerful abilities. Now, you do have to discard 1 other type of tile to do this. Each card has a cost, but getting a chance to upgrade your bag every time you take that bag build action is a pretty powerful accomplishment as well. Now, Chapter 3. Chapter 3 is going to mix in these tokens right here. These tokens are going to be special ability tokens that'll pop into the center of the board, and if you happen to be the first person to take one of the corresponding mason jar actions, you then get that extra little buff or that extra little special ability on that action. It's pretty darn powerful, and they stack on top of each other. So let's say there was an action that was never taken. Well, now you have 2 special abilities there to make it all the more attractive and all the more sweeter. This starts really changing the game because at times you kind of get into a rhythm. I'm going to do this, this, and this, 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 and this, 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 and this, every single time, and you're just kind of pushing towards endgame. When you mix in these tiles, suddenly the equations start to change, and you have to adapt and think on your feet. Whenever those tiles start coming out, you need to decide what advantage you want alongside the actions that you're going to be taking. Now, on top of that, we're also going to be making it a little bit harder to score victory points. As the game escalates, this little wooden spoon mechanic will be mixed in here. You see, in the basic version of the game, you'll score a victory point for every battle you win against our little haints here. Now, battles are composed of rolling cubes from your stockpile down the actual box and seeing what pops out. Now, if you noticed, I think I rolled 6 or 7 cubes and only 2 popped out. Well, that's because this has a bit of a catching mechanic. You see, it's tiered and staggered, and no matter how many you roll down, some are going to get stuck on the way, which means I now have better odds of potentially winning the next battle. However, this battle didn't end up doing too well for me. There's a pile more of them. But still, there's a whole collection left inside. I like how this dice tower works. I like how well it catches cubes, and I like that you can kind of math out the equation. If I put 4 of my red cubes down there and only 2 came out, that means in some ways I'm fighting with a decent advantage going into the next battle. mean, let's check this out one more time. 4 red, and let's do 4 blue. Came out 2 and 2. So that means right now there's 2 additional cubes floating somewhere in there. The next time I fight, the next time I roll, I'll potentially knock those back down that tower, and I'll be able to win or accomplish or close off my opponent. So, like I was saying, we're going to start mixing in this wooden spoon mechanic. You see, the first time you take out a haint, you'll score a victory point, and in the classic version of the game, that's true across the board, so you can technically win just by winning 3 battles. But with the wooden spoon mixed in, first victory point comes with 1, second comes with 2, third, and every one after that comes with 3 haints taken down. It means you can't just bully your way to surefire victory. You actually have to play down the strategy and the puzzle of the game a little bit more as well, or just go hold on to the brambles with sheer desperation. By the way, the brambles are a lot harder to hold on to than you'd assume. Things get violent, and things get violent quickly. Moving on to Chapter 4, we're going to introduce Kammi. Kammi is actually another young girl who was found on the same night as Emmy in the tree. Except she wasn't raised in Harrow County. She doesn't have a love for the land or the people of this small rural town. Instead, she was raised in the city. With goblins at her side, she is going to venture back into town trying to regain and take her sister's power. This is going to be another 2-player variant of the game, introducing another fully asymmetric faction that can be battled up against either the family or the protectors. This will give you an option to play down a series of different routes. You have a little bit of a different mechanic system when it comes to how she actually operates. She's going to be looking for her stuffed bear, I believe, her little doll here. She's going to be hunting around the board, trying to get a hold of her little doll, moving her goblins around the board as well, and slowly, hopefully, regaining the lost piece of her soul. Or you can thrust her down into the chasm of darkness from which she came and banish her again into nothingness. She's also going to have more special, powerful characters across the board, which gives her a little bit more of a chance to upgrade and specialize with each one of them. It's a really interesting faction, and it definitely adds a different variation and a different flavor to the gameplay. And then Chapter 5. Chapter 5 is bringing back that witch that I mentioned at the very beginning of the game to start with. Hester is returning to the game board, and Hester is coming back with a vengeance. Hester is going to be spreading her influence and her impact across the board. Now, she has to be played as a 3-player game against any other combination, but it has to be 3 players, and that's because Hester wants to infect, indoctrinate, and wriggle her worms, or her snakes, into the ear canals of all of your opponents. So each one of these units actually has a little hole in the side of their ear. So you get to fit in your tiny little snakes into the ear chasms of your opponent's players. And these little snakes allow you to then maneuver, manipulate, and take control of your opponent's pieces, smashing them together, creating bonfires across the map, which are going to give the opportunity to potentially respawn yourself so that you can curse the land, consume your other players' advantages, and slowly secure victory for yourself. This 3rd-player variant in the game changes the puzzle entirely. Hester is one of those factions that wants to not only instill chaos, but also balance both factions, make them both struggle to make it towards victory, while also trying to complete her own objectives. She is both a buff and debuff to the players, and the most experienced player is the player that should take over Hester, because it takes a lot of skill to make sure that you're not unbalancing one side in favor of another, while you're manipulating their pieces, while you're consuming their special tokens and their special abilities, and while, of course, you're spawning by bonfires and sticking yourself on the board. So that's the main flow, that's the main functionality of this game. A head-to-head 2-player until you make it to Chapter 5, with 3rd-player variant comes in and just sweetens the deal. I think Harrow County is, like I've said before, an incredible adaptation of a board game and a comic book merging together. I am insanely impressed with everything that Off the Page has been done, and we were a massive fan of Mind MGMT from the very beginning, and I'm excited to be able to sit down and show off the full 3-player experience of Harrow County to you sometime soon. I really do think that this is a comparable game to Root. It's not exactly the same when it comes to asymmetric factions and Root being a little bit more of a tactical war game, but the puzzle and the feeling of this is here, and it functions at that 2 and 3 player count in a way that Root just doesn't. At 2 players, this is a little bit of an abstract puzzle, a little bit of an area control skirmish, and a little bit of an asymmetric kind of victory point type game. Overall, I've really enjoyed Harrow County. I'm really excited that I get a chance to show it off to you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have in the comment section down below. So, thank you for watching, thank you for being here. Whatever the case, whatever you do, remember to do the important thing. Don't hang witches in your town. Go to the next one over. Then their souls will be stuck there, I think, permanently.